This is Smiles TV. Welcome to Smiles, your community affairs program from Missouri and Illinois, East St. Louis, Illinois. Thank you for tuning in. We have a wonderful broadcast for you today. I'm talking with Mr. Stanley Franklin. He's the president of the NAACP, and we're going to have What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. Don't go away. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more Smiles. I'm talking with Mr. Stanley Franklin, the president of the NAACP, and guess what? There's another banquet coming up. It's the 63rd Freedom Fund Awards Banquet, and it's going to be held at the Marriott in St. Louis, Missouri. Mr. Franklin, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know what? It's just always good to see you, and you're always so pleasant. Thank you for coming to Smiles TV again. You know what? You're from East St. Louis.
That is correct.
But I understand you were not born in East St. Louis, but you grew up in the community. I'd like our audience to just know a little bit about you.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to come on Smiles to get an opportunity to talk with you and talk with the community. So I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I came to East St. Louis when I was in the 7th grade. I attended junior high school in East St. Louis. I attended Hughes Quinn Junior High. I attended Lansdowne. Okay, for a short while. Mm-hmm. Then I attended the there's only one high school. I think it's Lincoln. I attended Lincoln Tigers. I'm a Tiger.
Now you've gone too far. Okay. We talked about that earlier, and it was funny because you said you actually went to Lincoln Senior High School.
That is correct.
Yeah, as you know, they merged on into East St. Louis Senior High School, but yeah, that's okay. But that's our history, and it's a good history.
It is, and I am a Tiger.
Okay.
So, I attended Lincoln Senior High School. After Lincoln, I went to the military. You know, I was a Marine.
Okay.
You know, I went to the Marines for about 3 years and came back and went to school. Went to Columbia College. Received a bachelor's at Columbia.
Is that Columbia in Missouri?
Columbia in Missouri.
Okay.
And I also went to Webster. I received an MBA from Webster University. So in the community, I'm a businessman. Okay, I'm a businessman in the community. One of the things that I did years ago, I used to own a temporary staffing agency.
Okay.
One of the which was my introduction to business, so to speak. The mission of the staffing was that there was a problem or a concern with employment in the East St. Louis community, and I wanted to answer the call to offer a solution for the unemployment problem in East St. Louis. So I started a temporary staffing agency. A lot of my friends were stating that, why would you start a temporary staffing agency in East St. Louis? The people in that community, they don't want to work.
Wow.
You know, and I said, well, you know, I think that there's a concern there. There's a problem in that particular community, and I wanted to offer a solution. And that solution was to be able to provide income, employment for the citizens in the East St. Louis community.
Wow, you know what? I remember that agency.
Yes.
And
Network Food Staffing.
Right, and it did quite well. You mentioned something that you were in the Marines, and my daughter has just finished, and I hope I get this right, AIT training, individual training for the. She's in the Army Reserves.
Okay.
And she's a nuclear physicist, right?
Wow.
However, I went to dinner with her roommate's dad, and he was a Marine. And there was this ongoing dialogue going on about the Marines and the Army. What is that all about?
Well, I guess being a Marine, one of the things about the Marine Corps, some people say you go through this 11 weeks of training, and it's kind of a brainwashing thing, you know. The Marines are the first to fight. Simplified delis. You're a Marine.
Okay.
You know, and it's that thing where you feel that, you know, when it comes to if there's a war or something, those particular Marines, they are the first ones to go on the ground and do do what they have to do.
Okay.
I was trained like that, but those days are somewhat behind me.
And I won't go
Yeah.
on because our
Yeah.
videographer, Seth White from IDEX photographer, multimedia photographer, I believe he's in the Air Force if I have that correct. So we won't start a big thing about regarding that. But now you are the president of the NAACP, the East St. Louis local branch. And how did you become president, first of all?
Back in the late 90s, I think I shared with you, I owned a temporary staffing agency by the name of Network Food Staffing.
Okay.
I was doing pretty well in the staffing business. I was employing a lot of people. At one time, I had about 750 employees in the St. Louis region.
Wow.
Working out of my office. I was doing this because it was something that I had a passion for. I wanted to make a difference in the community. As a result of that, I was recognized by the St. Louis Minority Business Association as St. Louis Businessman of the Year.
Excellent.
I received a lot of awards and accolades from being St. Louis Businessman of the Year, although I had a business in East St. Louis, but I was recognized in St. Louis. The following year, I was recognized by Bank of America, Small Business Excellency.
Okay.
As a result of receiving those type of accolades, there were a lot of people that were knocking at the doors and wanted me to be a part of what they were doing. The NAACP, I happen to know the president, Reverend Johnny Scott, and he actually said, well, Stan, I think you would be an excellent choice to be on the executive committee for the NAACP. This was about 20 years ago.
Wow.
Just about 20 years ago. And I said, well, I don't know about that, Reverend Scott. I said, well, let me think. He said, why don't you come to a meeting? So we talked for a while, and he encouraged me to become a part of the NAACP and sit on the executive committee. I sat on the executive committee for about 14 years. Reverend Scott decided to say that, Stan, he was getting up in the age, and he decided that, I'm looking forward to stepping down. And he was kind of looking for someone that he felt that would be able to take the NAACP to the next level.
Okay.
I was the one that Reverend Scott Reverend Scott and the members of the East St. Louis branch NAACP decided that when the election came, I was the choice.
Tell you what, we need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk about the upcoming Freedom Fund banquet that you're going to be chairing at the time, coming up. The 63rd annual NAACP is having their Freedom Fund banquet, and it's going to be a great time. Stay tuned, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Welcome back to Smiles. I'm talking with Mr. Stanley Franklin, the president of the NAACP, the East St. Louis branch. And we're going to have What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez coming up right after this segment. Don't forget, the NAACP is sponsoring the 63rd annual Freedom Fund Awards banquet. And the motto this year is the power of youth, steadfast and immovable. What's better than celebrating our youth? October 8th at the Marriott Hotel, St. Louis, Missouri. You don't want to miss this. There will be a VIP reception, and the banquet doors open at 5:30 p.m. October 8th, which is a Sunday, the NAACP Freedom Fund Awards banquet, the power of youth, steadfast and immovable. Mr. Franklin, you are the president of the NAACP. You have this great banquet coming up. It's the 63rd annual. That's a lot of years.
A lot of years.
Yes.
63 years we've been in the business of having Freedom Funds Awards banquets.
Okay.
This year, our focal point, and you mentioned it, and you did a great job in terms of sharing with the community in regards to our 63rd annual Freedom Fund Awards banquet. It's our focal point this year is we're going to focus on young people.
Okay.
It's going to be a parade of youth. You know, from the beginning of the program, from starting the introduction, we got a young lady that come, and she's from she's an 8th grade student at Madison Clark Middle School.
Okay.
And she's going to do the introduction of the Masters of Ceremony. So it's a young person. We're trying to make sure that we're showcasing young people this year at our banquet. And part of the other banquets, we're going to recognize, we got a new category this year where we're going to recognize rising stars. And those rising stars that we're going to recognize are young people that are doing positive things in school, that now we're going to be able to allow them a platform to showcase the things that they are doing.
Okay.
Because we want to encourage other young people to do what these young people are doing. So those young people that we have, we're excited about them. We're also providing an opportunity for the East St. Louis ROTC. They're going to be doing the colors.
I see.
So yeah, they're going to play a huge role in that.
Okay, and you're going to be giving out a lot of awards and what have you. So who are you at liberty to name some of the individuals that are expected to be present at the banquet? Yes,
we got quite a few awards that we're going to be presenting this year. We're going to be presenting awards for the health. A doctor that has been a doctor in the East St. Louis community for about 53 years. Dr. Lloyd Thompson.
Okay.
He was short term, he was an ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Okay.
And I can't remember the exact term, they call it the medical term, but that's what he was. He was an ear, nose, and throat doctor. He was an active member of the NAACP. He was over the life membership for a number of years.
Okay.
We all love Dr. Thompson, and he has done a lot of things in this particular community in terms of touching their lives of quite a few people. I say he had over 45,000 patients.
Wow.
So yeah, he has done quite a few things in this community. The NAACP East St. Louis branch started an AXO program. The AXO program the acronym stands for Afro Academic Culture Technological Scientific Olympics. We've organized a group of a committee that are looking for people that have an aspiration for humanities, STEMs, performing arts, visual arts.
Okay.
And we've organized them to a point where they have what we call a competition.
So you pretty much you're doing awards over the whole spectrum.
Yes, it's a Freedom Funds Awards Banquet. So one of the young guys that participated in our first year of the AXO program, he actually we organized the AXO program, and this young man went to national. He competed locally.
Okay, and if people want to get tickets?
Interesting that you asked. The ticket price, the general admission tickets are $75. The VIP reception tickets are $150. But we have a special going on the VIP tickets. If you purchase a VIP ticket before the 19th of September, we're giving a $25 discount. They're $125 opposed to $150.
Okay.
So if you have not got your VIP ticket, we encourage you to come by our office. We're meeting on Tuesdays at 5:30 at the Casino Queen. From 5:30 to about 6:30. If you want to pick up a ticket, you can meet us there on the hotel side. You can also come to our office at 4700 State Street. That's located diagonally across from Eastside High School. It used to be the old water company or the old cable company building. It's called the Vernon Franklin Professional Building. We want to encourage the community to come out to support our young people.
Yeah, and this sounds
the
like
power of youth.
The power of youth.
Steadfast and immovable.
Steadfast and immovable. Thank you, Mr. Franklin, for coming to Smiles Television. And I try to ask my guests, if you get the opportunity, will you come back to Smiles?
Sure, I will.
See, I'll make them see it on camera, right? Thank you for tuning in to Smiles. And don't forget, you're going to go to the NAACP Banquet. Support their efforts, the 63rd Annual Freedom Fund Awards Banquet. It's all about our youth, the power of youth. Steadfast and immovable. October 8th, Sunday, October 8th, at the Marriott Grand Downtown Hotel, 800 Washington, St. Louis, Missouri. The VIP reception is at 4:30, and the banquet doors open at 5:30. Don't go away. We'll be back with What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. Welcome back to Smiles. We just finished talking with the president of the NAACP, Mr. Stanley Franklin, and you are invited to the NAACP banquet. Once again, it's going to be held Sunday, October 8th. VIP reception starts at 4:30, and the banquet doors open at 5:30. You really don't want to miss that. Contact Stanley Franklin and get your tickets for that NAACP banquet because it's all about our youth. Right now, I'm talking with our resident expert. What's on your mind? With Dr. Des, our own Dr. Desarie Holmes. Thank you again.
Yay!
You know, I always have to shake your hand because I love talking with you. You give us such insightful information. And here we go again.
All right.
You know what? She told me, everybody, that I never asked her where she was from. And so we're going to find out a little bit more about Dr. Des, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the trauma and things that happen with youth and what happens with trauma in adulthood. But Dr. Des,
yes, ma'am.
Where are you from?
Finally.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay.
I am from Burlington, New Jersey.
Okay.
By way of North Philadelphia, 13th and Venango. Shout out Philly.
Okay.
And our claim to fame is I grew up less than a mile down the street from the Burlington Coat Factory.
Wow.
So the headquarters of Burlington Coat Factory was literally in my neighborhood.
And you know, when I first met you, I thought you were from East St. Louis. And so I was
Everybody
trying to
does.
make you a home girl, but now you put me on the spot. So everybody knows that you're really from the East Coast, which is fine.
Yes,
Good.
die-hard East Coast girl.
That's
But I've been
great.
in this area. We were originally stationed here in 1995 through Scott Air Force Base. And so I've been here since 95. I left in 07 to finish up my internship and my fellowship for my doctoral program. Went back to the East Coast in New Jersey, my home state, and at UMDMJ, which is University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, and then left there and went to the U of R, which is University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry, and then came back.
Okay, because I didn't first meet you at Touche Regional Hospital. We actually had met before then.
Right.
But we did that segment, Healthy Smiles, where we highlighted the 7 different departments. Okay, Dr. Des, today we're talking about trauma.
Yes, ma'am.
And especially childhood trauma. How that impacts that individual for the entirety of their life. What is trauma?
So I'm going to go ahead and read the definition of trauma, and it comes from SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. And what it says is individual trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening with lasting adverse effects, emphasis on lasting adverse effects, on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. And so to just tighten that up, basically what that says is that a child can experience something very early on in life, and then it can show up later on, 25 years later, in adulthood through some form or fashion, through some type of mental, physical, biomedical situation that's going on with them.
So in your line of work, do you mostly deal with individuals who have had trauma early on, or are you dealing with people that things just happen along the way?
Both.
Okay.
So with kids, my specialty, I started off with children, adolescents, infants, mother, baby dyadic, psychotherapy. And so working with a lot of families that had trauma, particularly sexual abuse. So some physical abuse, verbal abuse, but mainly sexual assault was my specialty area in trauma. And also working with adults. It is not uncommon to have adults, and we see this more common than what people think. So you can have someone 50, 60, 70, and they're still struggling struggling because they did not deal with what was going on in their childhood.
We had on one of our broadcasts a pastor, Monty Weatherwall.
Yes.
And he was so transparent, and he opened up that that whole history
Yes.
of childhood sexual
Yes.
abuse and how it impacted him
Yes.
throughout life. What would you tell individuals who have experienced that and they don't want to go get help? People are ashamed. How do you coax them into getting the help that's needed?
So before I answer that question, I want to even go back and step back, because there's a study that I really want to take a few moments and just explain this study and how that particular study exploded the whole notion of adverse childhood experiences. So there was a study that was conducted by Dr. Vincent Folletti, and it actually came out of obesity.
Okay.
And Dr. Folletti was looking at his clients, and he was running an obesity clinic, and he was finding that many of his clients would lose the weight and then turn around and gain the weight. And he couldn't figure out what was going on with this. And so he literally stumbled across where he asked a patient, so what was going on? And this patient of his, as he tells his story, was over 400 pounds, lost a tremendous amount of weight, then gained literally over 100 pounds back within a 3-week period of time. And he was fascinated by that. And he said, how is that even possible? Well, it comes to find out that someone had said something to her that was very sexual and had triggered some childhood memories with her that she experienced very, very early on. So he took that and he partnered with the CDC and Kaiser Permanente, which is a health maintenance organization out in Oakland, California.
Okay.
They did this humongous study over 17,000 people. And what they did was they tacked on this survey. And in this survey, they asked various questions about their childhood experiences prior to the age of 18. And it was astounding. And this study is just amazing with this study, because what this study came out was there were 10 themes that came out of this study.
Okay.
And they ended up labeling this the ACE study, or
The ACE?
ACE. ACE.
Okay, what do those acronyms stand
for?
for?
Right, so that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Okay.
And so the 10 themes that comes out of this study, it breaks down into 3 broad categories. One is for abuse, one is for neglect, and then the third is for family dysfunction. And so the abuse categories is physical abuse, verbal abuse, and sexual abuse. The neglect categories are physical neglect and emotional neglect. And then the family dysfunction is looking at whether there's an alcoholic parent. So if you grew up in a household with an alcoholic parent, if the mother has been involved in domestic violence, which we now call intimate partner violence, if a family member went to jail or to prison, if a family member abandoned the family through either death, divorce, or they just walk away from the family.
And you know what, and not to make you lose your train of thought, but some of the things you mentioned, a lot of times people don't realize that those activities and things actually really impact them for a duration of their life.
Here's what the study concluded, and this is what is so very, very important, and I just can't stress this enough. When they then linked with the adult of the current time, because they were asking the person basically to go back and reflect, right? And so what went on in the childhood, and then they looked at what was going on with the person currently medically, so biomedically what was going on. They saw things like heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, mental illness, depression, particularly suicide rates. And so all of these autoimmune disease, so all of these opportunistic type of diseases. And they found these very chronic diseases and how across the board, those were very common patterns. And so when they began to really look at this in research, and so they discovered that what children endure, because here's the deal. Children typically, when they are having to go through abuse and or neglect, they don't tell.
Right.
So
Right.
there's suffering and silence, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you're suffering in silence like that? Your body kicks in the stress hormones, and it's like turning on a light switch. If that light switch goes on and it never gets turned off, your body is being flooded with these stress hormones.
You know, that is such an interesting point, but we're going to need to take a break. Don't go away. We're having a great conversation with What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dr. Desarie Holmes. Stay tuned for What's Smiles. Thank you for staying with us. We're talking with Dr. Des, What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des, and the impact of childhood trauma and how that can carry on through a lifetime. Dr. Des, you were saying some of the physical ailments that are developed as a result of childhood trauma. We know some of the mental impacts. So, you know, being from East St. Louis, Illinois, people have whatever kind of connotation they want. I think we have a great community that needs help, of course, financially and otherwise. However, considering some of the crime that's in the community, considering some of the things that go on in any family throughout the country that you just identified, then you look at the behavior, you look at the crime rate.
Right.
And so can we attribute a lot of that to some of the trauma that these children experience growing up?
Right. Well, what's interesting is that we historically had not done that. That's a fairly new phenomenon where we're looking at the trauma, particularly what's called complex trauma. And what that simply says is it's trauma compounded on top of trauma.
Wow.
Right. So you have a child that is growing up in a household. Let's say mom is being beat on a regular basis, father is an alcoholic, or a parent is incarcerated, and then you have a community then that you are also then a part of, and that community is experiencing traumatic events with violence. That's a complex trauma, what we call a complex trauma victim. And so that's trauma compounded upon trauma. And so what that does is for a child, and I'm gonna try to be very brief because it's actually a very convoluted. What that does to a child is a developing child's brain. And I had said a few moments ago where the body is flooded with these hormones, right? These stress hormones. So you have a child whose brain is developing, and that developmental state, that brain, right? And so if a child is in a constant state of fear, fight, flight, freeze, right? Because hormonally, that's what those hormones are supposed to do. If you're in the woods and a bear is coming to attack you, you have a normal response. Your body is being flooded with that hormone that says, hey, you need to do something rapidly, quickly, go do it. Now imagine that the bear is the person who you live with every day.
Wow. So couple that then, and this is my question. So you got the bear in the home, right?
Right.
And then you have everything in your community and surrounding area that may be negatively happening.
Right.
And you're watching all of this on television with the children, watching some of the gross things are happening. Can we even attribute some of the things that we see on television and call that a type of trauma?
So yes, it can impact. Because the person doesn't necessarily have to be the one that is actually the event happened to. You could have a story and you share that story with me, and I could experience that story and internalize it.
You know what, this is such a great topic, and I understand we're going to be doing a lot of talks on trauma, not just within the family, but she's going to take us historically and tell us about slavery and how that impacted our family. We're going to have to cut this segment a little short. And I know it leaves you wanting more, so you're going to tune in to Smiles again. And I'm going to have to say thank you again, Dr. Des, who is not from East St. Louis, Illinois, but we have made her an East St. Louis resident. Thank you again for being on Smiles.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Smiles Television Talk Show. Tune in every Monday. Like I told you, we're in Missouri. We're in Illinois. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. You got to catch Smiles when you can. Tune in every week, and remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Keep smiling. You look better when you smile.